going to be a softly spoken video making rainbow line art with paper quilling. And I'm also going to be, during this whole thing, reading off a self-care assessment that you can use as a reflection tool. And I first used this to reflect upon my own self-care and see if there was anything that I was missing. So while I'm going through the self-care checklist, you can ask yourself, and the self-care checklist actually says to rate how frequently you do the self-care items. 5 is frequently, 4 is occasionally, 3 is rarely, 2 is never, 1 is it never occurred to me. I actually really like playing with this paper like this because it's almost like art in and of itself. Interesting. So I will try to find the link to the self-care assessment. It was developed, I think, at a university, so that you can print it out yourself if you want. It almost just looks like abstract art like this. Kind of cool. This is going to be a gift for my sister. And the rainbow is for pride colors. She actually wanted to do this as a tattoo design for herself, but she didn't say she wanted to do it with pride colors. But there was another tattoo she wanted to do with pride colors. So I'm kind of just combining those two ideas. So I have red, 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 red. Orange, 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 orange. Yellow, 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 yellow. Green, 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 green. Blue, 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 blue. Purple, 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 purple. So let's get started and see how long it'll take me to do this. I don't know if I will finish in one video, but I will try. So starting with red, and I have to adjust my paper. Okay, so just going to loosen the fibers. So for physical self-care, how often do you eat regularly? Like breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack if you want one. 5 frequently, 4 occasionally, 3 rarely, 2 never, or 1 it never occurred to me. Just reflect on that for your self-care. Then, how often do you eat healthily? As another form of physical self-care. often do you exercise? And this is not meant to be a judgment, completely not, because I myself have not rated all of these as a 5, and it's also not meant for you to beat yourself up if it seems like, oh, I'm getting a lot of 2s or 3s, not enough 4s or 5s. It's okay, it's just a tool for reflection. So, the next item of self-care for physical self-care. How often do you get regular medical care for prevention? I know for sure that's not easy. In my country, at least, the United States, unfortunately. How often do you get medical care when needed? So not just for prevention, but for when you actually really need it. Less often than I would want for myself personally. How often do you take time off when you're sick? This is one that I used to not do very much at all. And really has to change with the pandemic, I think. But we also need support, either from business companies or the government if need be, to actually make that be able to be a reality, because otherwise taking time off of work can be really, really difficult. So once again, this is not for shaming yourself or making yourself feel bad, because there are many factors outside of our own control, but that does not mean that we can't try as best as we can to take care of ourselves. So the next item for physical self-care is how often do you dance, swim, walk, run, play sports, sing, or do other physical activity that is fun. So not even necessarily for exercise, just physical activity that is fun. And maybe for you that's the same as your exercise. Maybe it's not. Then, how often do you get enough sleep? I say as it's already past my bedtime and I'm making an ASMR video. How often do you take vacations? How often do you take day trips or mini vacations? It's a separate category. How often do you make time away from technology? Like the internet, cell phones. Obviously not now if you're listening to this video or watching this video. But it doesn't always have to be something negative if you're on your phone. However, it is good to have screen time limited for everyone at any age. How often... Actually, that is the end of the physical self-care checklist. Then the next one is psychological self-care. So how often do you make time for self-reflection? How often do you have your own personal psychotherapy, or you go to a counselor, see a therapist, something like that? How often do you write in a journal or diary? How often do you read literature that is unrelated to work? I have to shift this to get a better view of what I'm looking at. How often do you do something at which you are not an expert or are not in charge? This one was interesting to me when I first read it because I didn't even think of that as self-care. In fact, if you would have just asked me, I would have thought the opposite was self-care, of like doing something that you are the expert at, so maybe you feel better about yourself. But then I think doing something that you're not the expert at is also very healthy too, once you think about it. Because you're learning a new skill, and also it could give you self-confidence as well, that, hey, I didn't know anything about this and now I'm pretty good at it. And honestly, for me, paper quilling was that thing, because I started only a few months ago, and I am really proud of some of the art that I've made so far. The next item for psychological self-care is how often do you decrease stress in your life? That's a tough one for me sometimes. Then how often do you notice your inner experience? Listen to your thoughts, judgments, beliefs, attitudes, and feelings. I feel like this one is super important to do. And then the next item in psychological self-care. How often do you let others know different aspects of you? I like this one because I think sometimes we can all kind of get into, or at least for me, I can kind of get into a role with people. And sometimes it's not bad per se. Like, for example, I have many degrees and a lot of people think I'm very smart. And so they look to me as the smart one, and I'm not smart, but I'm also not the expert in anything and everything. And I need to sometimes drop that role of being the one who knows what's going on or knows what to do next. and kind of let myself be the one that doesn't know and is looking to someone else. Or I think in my family, I'm the oldest. And sometimes I don't let myself act like maybe with a full range of what my actual emotions are, because I'm expected to play, and I do play, the role of the elder one. This is looking really cute so far. Okay, the next item in psychological self-care is how often do you engage your intelligence in a new area? For example, go to an art museum, history exhibit, sports event, auction, theater performance. That's a good one. Of course, it's kind of hard to do if you're in lockdown watching this, but I actually signed up for an academic conference in a field that I have interest in, but have never been formally or professionally involved in, and that is linguistics. So I think that counts. And that's an online conference because I'm recording this during lockdown still for the pandemic. The next item is, how often do you practice receiving from others? So for this you have to practice some vulnerability so that you can receive from others and not always give. I think that kind of goes to what I was saying before about roles that we play. And many of us play giving roles. And when I say play a role, I don't necessarily mean it's inauthentic, but rather in the way that it is expectations that we're fulfilling. Maybe we do want to fulfill them, and it's good to fulfill them. But it's also good to have flexibility. The next item is, how often are you curious? The item is be curious. That's kind of a little strange. How often do you be curious? How often are you curious? And then how often do you say no to extra responsibilities? I think that's another one I have trouble doing. And that actually ties back to me playing the role of the responsible one. Or someone who is responsible. The next item is, and this is psychological self-care, and the last item in psychological self-care is, how often do you take a rest? Which I guess, if it's in psychological self-care, it means kind of like a psychological break. instead of physical. And then we get to emotional self-care. First item there is, how often do you spend time with others whose company you enjoy? That's very important. Then, how often do you stay in contact with important people in your life? And the next item is, how often do you give yourself affirmations or praise yourself? That's something I've never really done. I mean, in terms of affirmations, like a regular practice. Something I've not really done. I have definitely praised myself before. Like, good job. I just did in this video saying that I've made really nice quilling art. Except this piece is a little frustrating, it's okay. The next item in emotional self-care is, how often do you love yourself? Maybe it's all the time. That would be awesome. Not all the time for me, unfortunately. But maybe it should change to acts of self-love, because I think that's a little bit easier to measure and to determine. The next item in emotional self-care is, how often do you reread favorite books or review favorite movies? For this one I actually put favorite TV show that I have reviewed, as in rewatched. It's kind of a weird way to put it, review, but rewatch is what I would say. And I have recently been rewatching a show that I watched like in middle school called Code Lyoko. If anyone knows that show. And I really like it. And it actually has helped me calm down, kind of. Like before bed. Because it's just really easy to watch, not very stressful, and it kind of just reminds me of the time in my life when I was just able to watch TV and not have to worry about much else. Once again, because I was quite responsible with my schoolwork, I didn't really have to worry about it too much. So yeah, that's Code Lyoko for me. The next item is, how often do you identify comforting activities, objects, people, relationships, places, and seek them out? So, I'm actually doing that right now because I like quilling and I like ASMR, So there you go. My self-care. Good job, me. Self-praise. And good job you, because if you also like quilling, or if you're just discovering quilling and thinking, ah, that's pretty cool, then you're also doing the same thing. The next item in emotional self-care is, how often do you allow yourself to cry? That's a good one. I don't think for me it's a matter of allowing myself or not. I think it's, I'm gonna cry. So, there it is. But I guess, not feeling ashamed of crying, or, you know, just not regretting it or something, or not apologizing for it, just letting it out. Maybe that's a better way to think about it. At least for me. And the next item is, how often do you find things that make you laugh? How often do you find things that make you laugh? I'll say this is another reason why I think being on the phone for a reasonable amount of time is okay, because I definitely have laughed at a great many memes in my time. And it's just pretty, it's a pretty easy way to laugh for me. Then the next item in emotional self-care is, well, this is the last one. How often do you express your outrage in social action, letters, donations, marches, protests? I think that one's really important too, because definitely sometimes I feel so ineffectual when I see certain suffering in the world, or any suffering really. But I do have to remind myself that I actually do contribute quite a bit to causes that I care about, specifically helping immigrants and refugees and people who want to become citizens of the US. I help them fill out all the necessary paperwork and translate legal documents for asylum cases, and it is hard work. They're very, very picky about all the little rules, and sometimes it's not even reasonable. Sometimes it's just, did you put an X instead of a check mark, or a check mark instead of an X? And other things are, of course, more reasonable. But it is tough work, because there's a lot of trauma that I have to know about in order to accurately help them answer questions. And it's tough. It's tough to kind of bear witness to their trauma. And then know that there's a possibility that their application could get rejected. But I don't want to think about that right now. It will make me upset. But I do have to find solace in, you know, personally, that I'm taking action, and that is a form of self-care. And of course, there are other things that I do too. I don't agree with factory farming, animal agriculture, so I'm vegan. It's a quite easy and delicious way to do something about something I care about. So next is spiritual self-care. And first item in spiritual self-care is, oh, and when I said that being vegan is easy, I mean it's easy for me. I know it's not easy for everyone. Okay, so the first item in spiritual self-care is making time for reflection. I like this because it's not super religious. Of course, religion is part of spiritual self-care if you're religious, but it doesn't have to be only religion, and this list kind of demonstrates that. Okay, so making time for self-reflection. Then spend time with nature. The air quality has actually been pretty bad lately where I live, and I haven't been able to get out into nature as much as I would like because I have asthma too, and it's really hard with the air quality being bad. But today I was able to go out and it was really nice. So I'm only going to be able to get a little bit of blue and purple here at the end, but that's okay. The next item on the list is be open to inspiration. I like that. And the next item is find a spiritual connection or community. So yeah, it doesn't have to be religion, but if it is, then it is for you. The next item is, how often do you cherish your optimism and hope? It's a nice sentiment. And I don't even know if I would call myself an optimist, a pessimist, or a realist. I really think it just depends on the situation for me, and also, of course, how I'm feeling and if there's any trauma relation to what's going on. And then the next item is, how often are you aware of the non-material aspects of life? Which I love this, it's very open-ended. Because what does non-material mean to you? And then also reflecting on that is important, I think, too. And I think for me, I actually do think about the non-material things in life quite a bit. And I find joy and solace in a lot of those things more than material things. But I know it's not always easy. The next item is, how often are you open to not knowing? I have to work on that one for myself. I like knowing. And kind of how I said before, it's tied into my identity a lot. So it can be stressful for me to not know. And then the next item on the list is, how often do you identify what is meaningful to you and notice its place in your life? That is really good. I feel like that might be related to like a gratitude practice. But it doesn't actually say about gratitude, it just means noticing and what it is and what place it has in your life. I feel like once you do that, it's pretty easy just to say a quick thank you. Then the next item is, how often do you meditate? How often do you pray? How often do you sing? This is so cute. Wow, it's adorable. I love it. How often do you have experiences of awe? I'm kind of in awe at this. It is adorable. You can still see some of the wet glue, but once that dries, you won't be able to see it anymore because it glues, or it dries clear, like you can't see the glue on the first part that I did on the kitty butt and the kitty tail, but you can still see the glue on the more recent parts. How often do you contribute to causes in which you believe? How often do you read inspirational literature, like listen to talks or hear music, etc.? And I will go through the workplace or professional self-care kind of quickly because we're at the end of the video. How often do you take a break during the workday? How often do you take time to chat with coworkers? How often do you make quiet times to complete tasks? Kind of slow your day down, less stress. I know it's not always possible at work. How often do you identify projects or tasks that are exciting and rewarding? How often do you set limits with clients and colleagues? How often do you arrange your workspace so it's comforting and comfortable? How often do you negotiate for your needs, benefits, pay raise? Well, this video is supposed to be relaxing, but I think all the work stuff is actually making me feel stressed out. Sorry about that, if it's the same for you. But again, it's good to consider these things as self-care. And maybe it'll give you a little boost the next time you need to ask for a raise of like, hey, this is for my self-care. You don't have to tell your boss that, but tell yourself that. Then, how often do you have a peer support group? I think that's really important. How often, I guess, have you developed a non-trauma area of professional interest? And then finally, there's one last item, which is balance. How often do you strive for balance among work, family, relationships, play, and rest? Well, I hope that this has allowed you to rest. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. And I found this self-care checklist is from the American University Counseling Center, Mary Graydon Center. I'll put a link down below for it if I can hopefully find it online, because I have a paper version. I hope you enjoyed. Time to stretch out, go to sleep, take a cat nap, or, go to sleep at nighttime, which is longer than a cat nap. See you in the next